Tonight, a damning report into maternity services in Edinburgh. Poor staffing levels and delays to patient care may have led to women and babies being put at risk.
They were saying you just need to push harder, you need to push faster. It felt really panicked and rushed.
NHS Lothian insists improvements have been made at Edinburgh Royal Infirmary, also making the headlines. The Home Office is accused of ignoring calls not to house asylum seekers in Inverness Army Barracks. A warning: Scotland's jails are facing a ticking time bomb with pressure on staff and record prisoner numbers.
And in sport, it's a big night in the Scottish Premiership here at Celtic Park. Martin O'Neill takes charge of his first match as interim manager as Celtic face Falkirk.
I'm in Paisley, where table-topping Hearts look to continue their fine form as they take on St Mirren.
And I'm at Easter Road as Hibernian take on Rangers.
I'm John Mackay. This is the STV News at 6. Good evening. Scotland's busiest maternity unit has been placed under extra scrutiny by the Health Secretary after a damning report found a culture of mistrust, delays to patient care and frustration over staffing levels, potentially putting women and their babies at risk. NHS Lothian has insisted improvements have already been made at Edinburgh Royal Infirmary, but says it will take time to get things right. Well, the senior reporter Gordon Cree is at the hospital. And Gordon, this isn't the first time concerns have been raised, is it?
No, John, you remember this time last year there was whistle blowing followed by a review which confirmed staff shortages and a poor working culture. An improvement plan was announced then. There was an inspection earlier this year which is published today. But it's become clear in the last few days this is a far wider problem than just this hospital and just Lothian. So the Health Secretary, Neil Gray, has announced a maternity and neonatal task force listening to the experiences of women and midwives. In making that announcement, he revealed he'd nearly lost his own wife to an inadequate assessment of an ectopic pregnancy. Just an illustration of how high the stakes can be when this type of care goes wrong. Eleanor has a healthy 18-month-old son, but the experience of giving birth at Edinburgh Royal Infirmary last year was traumatising. She told me she was left in a side room without a midwife until the very final moments of her labour.
When I got into the labour wards, they had no idea how long I'd been pushing for. And they were saying you just need to push harder, you need to push faster. It felt really panicked and rushed. And then when the baby was delivered, he came out in one movement, almost fell on the floor because there was no midwife near me, no hands near me. And I had a 3C degree tear, which is one of the worst degree tears you can get.
Eleanor believes the root of her experience was inadequate staffing levels, a point highlighted previously by whistleblowers and again when inspectors visited the unit this summer. This is Scotland's busiest maternity unit. 5,500 babies are born here every year, and while the vast majority, of course, are delivered safely and without incident, this unannounced inspection report raised what it called serious concerns about culture, the oversight of patient safety and staff well-being. The Health Board has recruited an extra 70 midwives who should all be in place by the end of the year. Work has already started to address culture and help staff feel supported, but the Chief Executive told me it's important to get things right.
But because we are co-producing the solutions with staff, with people who use the service, I am content that we do that diligently and well, and it takes us a little bit longer rather than we rush things through and it doesn't have the intended impact for colleagues and for service users.
I still have significant concerns about the pace and the momentum of change, and I am clear that we must see urgent improvements. That is why the Scottish Government has taken the decision to escalate NHS Lothian maternity services to level 3 of the NHS support and intervention framework.
Today's report does highlight positives too. It says inspectors saw staff working hard to provide compassionate and responsive care in very challenging circumstances. But it's clear there's still some way to go to restore confidence from women like Eleanor.
I really would like another child, but I can't imagine giving birth again. I can't imagine voluntarily going into the hospital. It does bring back all those memories of just being left alone during the time when I was most vulnerable, probably my entire life, when I most needed someone there to watch out for me, when I wasn't able to advocate for myself, and that they let me down.
Gordon Cree, STV News, Edinburgh.
Calls for a halt to moving asylum seekers into old army barracks in Inverness have been ignored by the Home Office. There were urgent questions on the issue in both the House of Commons and the Scottish Parliament today. Well, our political editor Colin Mackay was watching both. So Colin, how's this playing out?
Well, let's start at Westminster because this is a reserved issue. What emerged there is that 309 single male asylum seekers are expected to be moved into Cameron Barracks in Inverness by the end of November. Local Lib Dem MP Angus MacDonald asked an urgent question. He wanted to know why he, the Scottish Government and the local council had not been consulted about this move in advance. The Home Office Minister Alex Norris said that was really because the barracks had previously been used to house Afghan asylum seekers.
Why is it okay to close town centre migrant hotels in the south of England, yet plan to house 300 migrant men in army quarters in Inverness city centre? It's effectively the same thing.
Too many people come to this country being sold a dream that they will be housed in a hotel and they'll be able to work illegally in our economy. Today we have announced that we've had our best ever year for illegal work raids with 1,000 people deported as a result. But we have to break the model that says you'll get to live in a hotel and work illegally, and this is a really important part of that.
Now, Angus MacDonald also asked the UK Government to call a halt to this decision just now. The Minister didn't even really respond to that. But here at Holyrood, it was a Conservative MSP asking the urgent question and an SNP Minister responding.
My constituents are rightly concerned about their safety, not on the streets, but their health safety. There is just not enough resources in the Highlands.
People have genuine concerns, but that does not mean that those concerns are born at all out of racism.
Scotland does welcome refugees, and we do welcome asylum seekers, and it's important that we have our moral and our international responsibilities at the forefront of our minds as we look to do so. But that's exactly why these decisions should be taken in collaboration.
So, Colin, what happens now?
Well, the asylum seekers are due to move into the barracks at the end of next month, but there is another potential problem here because the barracks are actually due to be refurbished because there's asbestos that needs to be removed before you can move in the asylum seekers. And there's been a lot of talk today here in Westminster and at a local council level of community cohesion. That's because politicians fear that the protest that we've already seen outside the Claddon Hotel housing asylum seekers in Falkirk could be about to move north up the A9 to Inverness. And just one last thing before I go, John, there's a bit of disruption in the Scottish Parliament tonight because Microsoft has got some kind of outage. It's not just affecting here, but what it's doing here is delaying democracy because they can't vote on the land reform bill.
We'll see how that develops. Colin at the Scottish Parliament, thank you. Scotland's jails are facing a ticking time bomb. That's according to prison officers who say pressure on them is mounting due to unprecedented population levels behind bars. It comes as the Scottish Government outlined plans for the emergency early release of up to 1,000 prisoners across Scotland between now and April. Ministers hope that will ease what has been branded a perfect storm. Lewis Mickey reports.
Today's report says Scotland's prison system is at crisis point. Around 400 officers were interviewed on their experience working in the role. They were damning in their assessment.
Would you like to try restrain a 6-foot, 18-stone, 21-year-old who spends their time in the gym most days? when you're 67 years old?
There is a perfect storm brewing. It's a ticking time bomb.
I finished the shift and helped out with my 2-year-old's sleep routine by reading a story. Unknown to myself, I've inhaled a legal high. I struggled reading out basic words.
I was on a recruitment interview panel and realised the applicant was from an organised crime gang.
Now I know that's something the public expects staff, to an element of risk with that role, and that's true. There is always a risk in the role, and staff are comfortable and recognise that that's part of the job. I think the numbers of staff have talked about not feeling safe, concerned about the risk of violence between prisoners and staff, prisoners on staff, was the bit that jumped out on it.
Well, I think the fundamental issues of overcrowding need to be addressed because, as I've said, the short-term releases give you a small pressure release, but they don't solve the problem.
Last week, Scotland's prison population hit an all-time high of 8,430. The Scottish Government wants to try and ease this pressure by putting through the emergency early release of up to 1,000 prisoners. This is similar to a scheme that since last year has seen more than 800 prisoners freed early from their sentence.
Because people aren't getting time out of cell, they're not getting access to rehabilitation services and support, and they're also being taken away from their home establishments and moved to other places to try and even out the pressures across the estate.
There will, though, be limits on which prisoners are eligible to be freed.
Only short-term prisoners with under 4 years within 180 days of release are eligible, and there are strict exemptions for those in prison for sexual or domestic abuse offences.
Critics say that reducing figures in the short term is simply a sticking plaster, though, with issues around drug use and mental health also flagged up in the report.
I think it's clear that Victim Support Scotland are right when they say this is no solution. And we will be in this situation next April, following a further 1,000 prisoners having been released.
The POA say the emergency release scheme is welcome, but echo that it's not a long-term solution. Lewis Mickey, STV News.
A woman and her dog have died after being struck by a car while crossing a road in Port Glasgow this morning. Emergency services were called to the A8 on Greenock Road at around 7:05. 42-year-old Amy Gray was struck by a Land Rover and died at the scene. Workers made redundant following the closure of the Grangemouth refinery are to be prioritised for new jobs through a funding clause. The scheme, developed by the Scottish Government and Unite the Union, means businesses receiving investment from the Just Transition Fund must prioritise recruiting Grangemouth staff. The First Minister says meaningful steps are being taken to ensure workers are not left behind. A project aimed at tackling the stigma around sexually transmitted infections has won a British Medical Association award. Glasgow Caledonian University researchers helped develop films to encourage more young people and those from diverse communities to get tested for STIs. They received the award for improving the quality of sexual health care in the UK.
I think the stigma around STIs has been there for centuries, and it's very difficult to change people's views and attitudes. I think we would just say that they are just another infection, and that if caught early, they can be easily treated.
A man who murdered a young bus driver by deliberately driving his van into ongoing traffic has been jailed for life. David Livingston planned to take his own life when he caused the fatal crash in the A77 near Fenwick in 2023. The 44-year-old collided with a bus being driven by Gordon Stirling, who died of his injuries in hospital. Tara Fitzpatrick reports.
Well, this was a case described by Judge Lord Mulholland as one of the most selfish he had seen in his entire career. Today, as he imposed sentencing, he said he stood by those comments. The family of 23-year-old Gordon Stirling attended court today in purple T-shirts, honouring his memory with his favourite colour. The judge said learning of the impact Gordon's death had had on his family was heartbreaking, and he told killer David Livingston, "You are responsible for this."
What you did was evil. You thought only of yourself. You were full of self-pity. You cared nothing of the consequences for Gordon Stirling and his family. Your intent was to kill yourself, and you didn't care about the consequences for the driver and the passengers on the bus. You have shown no remorse.
Livingston appeared in the dock in a wheelchair due to the injuries he himself sustained when he deliberately drove his van into the oncoming traffic of the A77 back in August 2023. He crashed into a single-decker stagecoach bus. He injured 2 passengers as well as Gordon, who was rushed to hospital but died just 1 week later from his injuries. Livingston's own defence lawyer described his actions as wicked and reckless. Now, during this trial, Livingston has repeatedly denied that he was feeling suicidal, but a jury concluded that it was his attempt at his own life which led to the murder of another. Despite maintaining his denial, the court also heard how Livingston later confessed to his ex-partner and mother while in hospital. He said, "Don't tell anyone or I will get into trouble." Around 10 minutes before committing the crime, he also sent "I love you" messages to his son and daughter. Imposing a jail term today, Lord Mulholland said Livingston himself had imposed a life sentence of grief and loss on the family of Gordon Stirling, who will now have to do all they can to keep his memory alive. Tara Fitzpatrick, STV News at the High Court in Stirling.
Time now for sport. It's a big night in the Premiership. Ronnie Charters is at the home of St Mirren. Jamie Bothwick is at Easter Road. But first, let's go to Rahman at Celtic Park.
Your window to sport. C.R. Smith sponsors STV Sport.
A very good evening from Celtic Park, where tonight Martin O'Neill takes charge of his first game as Celtic interim manager 20 years after his previous spell at the club. Falkirk are the visitors here this evening, and it's been some week here in Glasgow's East End, from Brendan Rodgers' resignation to that stunning statement from Dermot Desmond to the return of O'Neill in the dugout. Well, Martin O'Neill and his assistant Sean Maloney have had just over 24 hours to work with the players following Rodgers' shock departure on Monday night. While Celtic have lost their last 2 league games, Falkirk are targeting their 3rd successive league win.
The team are a good side. They're a good team. They're a good side. Might just have, not used to losing some football matches, so maybe a little bit of confidence has been lost from that. But the players are really, really decent players, and I'm genuinely looking forward to working with them.
I went toe-to-toe with a team that beat Celtic 2-0 the week before. We went to Motherwell and won, we went to Aberdeen and won, we went back-to-back wins. We get that little bit of winning at home out of the way as well. So the guys have got to be taking much and much more confidence and belief in every game that we do well.
Well, Martin O'Neill is a fan's favourite around these parts. He had a very successful first spell. He won a treble in his first season, took the club to the UEFA Cup final, but he joins the club in a different period just now. They're in a bit of a crisis. Earlier on, we spoke to some fans to ask them about the events of the last 48 hours and the return of Martin O'Neill to the dugout.
Not surprised at all. It's been coming all season. It's been coming to the start of the season. I really think that your man wasn't interested for the beginning of the season.
I think it was time for Brendan to go. End of the day, he's picking the team.
It's just dramatic, yeah. I'm pretty glad to see O'Neill back, yeah. Yeah, he'll sort it out for a wee while, eh?
It's a short-term issue. I think he understands that himself. He doesn't want to be here for a long time, but they needed somebody in, and he's a great man to have in and to lift everybody.
The thoughts of some supporters there earlier on at Celtic Park. Well, Celtic against Falkirk is one of 5 games in the Premiership tonight in Paisley. League leaders Hearts take on St Mirren, and Ronnie Charters is there for us. Ronnie.
Yes, Rahman, table-topping Hearts travelling here to Paisley, looking to continue that unbeaten start in the Premiership. And coming up against a St Mirren side struggling at the moment in the Premiership, it has to be said. In terms of Derek McInnes's men, though, they are in a huge momentum shift, buoyed by that fantastic 3-1 win over Celtic at the weekend, which saw them move 8 points clear at the top. But the Tynecastle boss says there can be no talk of titles at the moment. Full focus is on the Buddies this evening. And in terms of St Mirren. They come into this one desperate to end a poor run of form. 3 straight defeats sees the Saints sitting in 9th in the table, but Stephen Robertson confident they can turn that around this evening. Let's now hear from both camps.
The game's just coming thick and fast. I'm actually not looking beyond it. I get it and understand it because it's unusual for any team to be 8 points clear of a team like Celtic, but hoping that we can't be after a lot more show on Wednesday. We go to Paisley and we know how difficult that is at any time. So just because we're in a good run of form and we'll take the good of that, because football's not always like that.
This happens every year at a club like St Mirren. You always have a blip. We'll have another one, no doubt, throughout the season. It's how quickly can you end that? How quickly can you get back to winning ways again? And not forget what you're very good at. You know, when people only look at negatives in life and they only hear the negative things, what we have to do around here is be positive.
Can Hearts continue that maroon momentum and keep up the pressure on second place Celtic, or can St Mirren flip their fortunes around and get a win that could propel them into the top 6? An intriguing encounter here in Paisley, Rahman. Kick-off for St Mirren versus Hearts is 7:45.
Ronnie and Paisley, thanks very much for that. Well, there's a big game taking place in Easter Road tonight as 3rd place Hibernian take on 5th place Rangers. Jamie Bothwick is there for us.
Yeah, it's felt like quite a slow start to the season for Hibs, but back-to-back victories have catapulted them up the table. They now sit just 3 points behind Celtic, and that victory away at Aberdeen at the weekend has confidence coursing through Easter Road here ahead of facing Rangers this evening. Well, Danny Rule oversaw his new side's first home league win of the campaign when they defeated Kilmarnock on Saturday. The last time Hibs and Rangers met was back in September. It was Rangers who came out on top in a League Cup tie at Ibrox.
We're very much looking at our own level of performance, looking at the last time we played against them, and not how can we improve for that performance. Absolutely, I don't think we played anywhere near the level we can, and certainly as a result of that we didn't get anything from the game. So for us to get a result tomorrow night, we know what we need to do. We've worked on a game plan to try and go and win the game.
This is always a good thing. If a team attacks, that gives us also a lot of spaces what we should use, and this is tomorrow exactly to find the balance. As a team who likes to have a little bit the transition moments in both directions. If you finish the action, then it's good for you. If you don't, or if you lose the ball again and you have a transition against you, then it's dangerous, and for this we have to prepare.
There are no fresh injury concerns for Rangers this evening, but for Hibs, Dylan Levitt will miss out and Warren O'Hara is also likely to be out injured. The visitors can leapfrog their hosts by defeating them this evening, but for Hibs, they're only looking upwards. They have their eyes on a place in the top 2. It's usually a cracker when these two clubs meet under the lights. Kick-off here at Easter Road is at 7:45.
Well, there are 2 other games in the Premiership tonight. At Fir Park, Motherwell take on Dundee United, while at Rugwick Park it's Kilmarnock against Aberdeen. Right here at Celtic Park, it is the return of Martin O'Neill. He says there's a nervous excitement to his return in the dugout as he prepares for his first game in charge against Falkirk.
Your window to sport. C.R. Smith sponsors STV Sport.
Sean's here with the weather. And Sean, we've seen the devastation of the storms in the Caribbean. What chance of them coming across the Atlantic and the remnants getting us?
Well, Hurricane Melissa's been downgraded. She was a Cat 5 yesterday, but now she's Category 2. She just left Cuba a few hours ago, heading over the Bahamas. The next 24 hours sees it drifting towards Bermuda. Now, as John said there, remnants of that could be heading our way, but what I want to do, I know this frightens you, it scares a lot of you out there, I just want to reassure you, it has been a major hurricane, but the remnants of it that could head towards the northwest of the country on Monday is just going to bring us a normal wet and windy day for autumn, so nothing too much for us to worry about. But it's unsettled weather into the start of next week, but before that, also on Halloween. Let's have a look.
An icy start to the day will give way to a series of oohs and ahs. TUI sponsors STV Weather.
Start off by having a look at the bottom left of the screen. Plenty of rain. That's got our name on it. tomorrow. But for the time being, dry with clear spells. We've had some pretty lively showers out there today, and chilly in the passing showers. If you've got a thermometer in the car and driving through those showers, you might have noticed it went from about 9 to 5 degrees earlier on this morning as I was driving up from Abingdon. That was the case in those heavy showers. Tonight it's dry, it's clear, it's chilly as well. South Lanarkshire, probably coldest spot, down to about -1 or -2 in some areas. It's a bit of a cold, frosty start in some spots tomorrow, but beautifully sunny before, well, this arrives and really ruins the day. We start off very hopeful. Lots of dry, sunny weather, especially further east, but a lot of clouds during the afternoon, outbreaks of rain and the winds picking up. We're going to see gales developing around the Hebrides by the end of the afternoon. Have a look at this. Here's the old gale highlight. We've been busy with the cranes today. You can see down the east coast, the west coast tomorrow. Widely we'll see gales and some gusty winds and wet weather around. So tomorrow night, not looking too great. But then that takes us into Halloween, of course. And it looks very showery, at least to start the day. Some quite heavy showers. We're going to hang on to that blustery wind with gales around the Hebrides. But hopefully, if you're heading out guising, most of those showers, fingers crossed, look as if they'll have cleared away. But it still will remain quite blustery. Then on Saturday, a little bit quieter, but there'll still be a good number of showers around. Bye-bye.
TUI sponsors STV Weather.
And that's all from us this evening. Don't forget Scotland Tonight at 10:40 with Rona. From all of us here, thank you for watching. Have a good night.